Like most who have gotten into the cinema of Andrzej Zulawski, the first film I watched of his was his 1981 divorce melodrama cum arthouse horror flick Possession, which is by far the greatest and surely the weirdest film to have made the DPP's original list of 72 banned films over here in the UK during the 1980s video nasty scandal. It starred Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani giving the most intense performances of their careers, and easily sits amongst my personal all-time favourite films, and upon first discovering it over a decade ago, it left me hungry to track down more of the director's works through a myriad of imported DVDs and YouTube uploads with varying degrees of image quality, censorship problems and poor subtitle translation. The three early 1970s Polish works of Andrzej Zulawski that make up this box set have been near the top of my Blu-ray wants list for a very long time, as they have been criminally underrepresented on home media in the West, with only his debut feature The Third Part of the Night getting a UK DVD release over a decade ago. The best way to see the other two films in passable quality was via a Polish DVD box set of the trilogy, which had English subtitles, but this set has been very rare for a long time and commanded a lot of money until recently. That set is thankfully now obsolete due to this beauty of a Blu-ray box set by Eureka. If you are only familiar with Possession and are curious to see what else the director has done, then this box set should be a no-brainer. These three films are easily the next logical step in the director's filmography. They are certainly amongst his finest work, displaying his unique maverick style of blending virtuoso neurotic acting theatrics and political allegory via elements of surrealism, horror and sci-fi. If you've never seen a Zulawski film, then I'd still say tracking down a copy of Possession would be your best starting point. But it also wouldn't be unadvisable to start with these three works, especially since the box set is a limited edition release, and Possession is currently out of print until Second Sight re-releases it sometime next year. All three films courted varying degrees of controversy under the communist regime of their native country, and only his 1971 debut feature The Third Part of the Night actually saw a theatrical release there at the time of its completion. In film scholar Michael Brook's terrific newly filmed featurette on the film, he indicates that it went against the norms of Polish cinema at the time by depicting the hellish environment of Nazi-occupied Poland without the usual sense of Polish heroism in its characters. Instead, the thoroughly bleak atmosphere unsettled moviegoers, as well as ruffling a few political feathers at the time. The structure and style of this film is a little confusing, but that is kind of par for the course with this director, to be honest. Even if you don't understand exactly what you've seen, it's best to just let the experience wash over you, and that goes for all of his films really. There's plenty of informative extra content to put things in context after you've seen them. The film is loosely biographical, based on the experiences of his father in Poland during the Nazi occupation. Through a series of circumstances, a man's wife and child are killed, and later he is chased to be killed himself. He runs into a building where another man, who is dressed and looks just like him, is shot and taken away as he is mistaken for him. Our protagonist then helps the man's heavily pregnant wife, who looks exactly just like his recently murdered wife. It's an easy recommendation for fans of Possession due to its similarly cold and nightmarish atmosphere, and the similarly explored motif of doppelgangers. The many scenes of casual assassinations in broad daylight are genuinely chilling, and the subplot revolving around men and women renting out parts of their bodies for typhus-infected lice to feed upon in exchange for papers is pretty skin-crawling stuff that would sit right at home in a Cronenberg flick. The restoration work here is fantastic, giving so much more clarity than the previously released second-run DVD. The biggest change, however, is the overall colour grading. The slightly more natural colours of before are now replaced by a much colder blue tone which the director approved before his passing. I was already familiar with the old colour palette and initially sceptical of this change, but I'm pleased to say that this Blu-ray is an overall improvement, and the bluer tone matches the icy atmosphere much better here. Zulawski's sophomore feature, The Devil, was completed the following year and was swiftly banned by Polish authorities for the politically allegorical use of the film's historic setting and narrative, as well as its potent blend of sex and violence. Because of this, the very similar titles, and the inclusion of bloodied nuns, it's not unsurprising that this film has often been confused with Ken Russell's 1971 film, The Devils. Set at the tail end of the 1700s, during the time of Poland's partition resulting from an invasion by numerous neighbouring forces, it was a time when Poland essentially ceased to be, and provides the perfect backdrop for this carnivalesque blend of gothic horror and apocalyptic costume drama. The plot, such as it is, concerns a man freed from his imprisonment for attempted regicide by a man who may or may not be an agent of the devil, who subsequently acts as his guide and conscience. He is given a horse and a nun to travel with for companionship, as he is slowly manipulated to murder several people on his surreal journey back to his family's home. My previous experience of watching this film had been through a very murky, smeary and terribly produced American import DVD released by Facets. Rediscovering it again through this brand new restoration and transfer was like night and day. I finally fully appreciated the film this time around, and would go as far as to say that this is Zulawski's best work alongside Possession. It has some of the maddest performances committed to celluloid, adding to the aura of Grand Guignol fever dream that sits somewhere between Jodorowsky's El Topo, spliced with something like a Bergman film. After The Devil, Zulawski was subsequently exiled to France, where he made his biggest international hit with The Most Important Thing, Love, before he was invited back to Poland to make an adaptation of his great-uncle's science fiction books titled The Lunar Trilogy. This would become On the Silver Globe, deriving its name from the first part of that trilogy and depicting the events of the first two books. On the Silver Globe had a huge budget and would have been the biggest European science fiction film of its time had it been released on schedule. But infamously it wasn't to be. Once again, Polish authorities got involved, only this time it was before the film was even finished. Roughly 80% of it was in the can before production was halted. Thankfully, what was shot was miraculously preserved by the crew, and Zulawski was finally given the chance to finish his film 10 years later. The gaps here are filled in by Zulawski's narration over the top of contemporary footage shot around Warsaw. It wasn't an ideal way to finish the film, but there was little alternative given the circumstances. Zulawski's trademark use of overly dramatised philosophical dialogue, which is certainly present in his prior works, is in total overdrive here in this near 3-hour-long operatic science fiction odyssey. The plot, in simplified terms, tells the story of astronauts travelling to an Earth-like planet to start a new colony, in the process accidentally creating religion, politics and war. The film fuses different types of objective and subjective filmmaking styles, and most of the first part of the film employs what might be the first instance of the found footage style of filmmaking, popularised by such works as The Blair Witch Project and Cannibal Holocaust. The aforementioned overtly philosophical, oftentimes nonsensical rambling and borderline pretentious dialogue is certainly the most divisive element of the film for some, but I would urge prospective viewers who are put off by this to at least give the film a go, purely for what the film does on a visual level, for even if you end up disliking it on the whole, I guarantee you will still find some sense of admiration for the sheer scope and ambition. I remember being first drawn into obsessing over finding a way to watch this film upon reading about its troubled history and seeing stills of the amazing costume and makeup work, alongside shots of people impaled on tall spikes on the beach, a gruesome-looking crucifixion scene, and a mad, writhing, ritualistic underground orgy. The film certainly doesn't disappoint on this kind of spectacle, and much like The Devil, it's a true revelation to see this restored, since it's mostly only existed in the form of bad quality bootlegs. When this set was originally announced earlier this year, it was going to be a 2-disc set featuring the third part of The Night and the Devil on one disc and On the Silver Globe on the second, not leaving a lot of room for extras. After a couple of delays relating to the colour grading of The Devil, Eureka thankfully used the extra production time of this set to add a host of extra features, turning this into a 4-disc set plus a comprehensive 60-page book. Each film has newer translated subtitles approved by the director before his passing a few years back, and both the first two films have newly filmed interviews with film historian Michael Brook, who, alongside Daniel Bird, is one of the most knowledgeable and well-researched experts on Zulawski and Polish cinema in general. Both interviews are around 20 minutes long and packed with brilliant contextual information. The Devil also has an enlightening interview with Zulawski's son. It's On the Silver Globe, though, which gets the lion's share of the extras, with a meaty feature-length audio commentary led by Daniel Bird, which is filled with a ton of insightful anecdotes and stories about the film and director. He also does a great job of explaining some of the film's many confusing scenes. 4 more featurettes detail the influence of the original novels, an insightful look at the cinematography, a trip to the abandoned Polish salt mines where a large portion of the film was shot, and a short piece on the costumes, props and general design work behind the film. To cap things off, there is also a fourth disc featuring an excellent and thorough 2021 documentary titled Escape to the Silver Globe. The first part of this serves as a great biography of Zulawski, charting everything up to the Silver Globe, before going headlong into the history and making of this film, featuring a variety of interviews with many of the surviving crew. As previously mentioned, this is a limited edition release, but knowing Eureka, there's a reasonable chance that this will get re-released in a standard edition, slimmed down form. But you can guarantee that you'll miss out on the lavish 60-page book, and more than likely won't get the Escape to the Silver Globe documentary either. This set has rekindled my fondness for the Maverick director's brand of cinema, and I look forward to revisiting the rest of his filmography alongside filling in the 2 or 3 gaps of the films that I have yet to see of his. So if you'd like to see more content like this, then please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video.